Hello, gorgeous soul friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Hannah. Welcome to my channel, and it's such an honor to be a part of your wondrous earth experience today. So about a year ago, I made a video on evolution, and I want to revamp that video because I want to specifically touch on the human body as a spiritual technology. And I'm not referring to any kind of transhumanist mumbo jumbo. I already have a video on my channel talking about the implications of AI and the rise of transhumanism and all of that stuff. You can check it out down in the description box below. But in that video, I do talk about how AI has a level of sentience and is going to continue to develop a level of sentience. But the thing that separates nature's technology from inorganic technology, man-made technology, is that nature is infused with God consciousness. Okay, we're infused with the Christ impulse. And AI is also infused with its own impulse, and we'll talk about that in another video, but it is not the God force. It's not the God consciousness that nature is infused with. We are technology that is alive, it's living, and this is gonna be kind of an esoteric look at nature's technology and a very advanced expression of it, which is our form, the human body. Now, many of us know that the human body has served as inspiration for a number of mechanical contrivances. You have the ball and socket joint, hinges, the plumbing system was modeled after our veins and our arteries. So there have been hundreds of machines and implements that have been created and modeled after our form. And really the subtle workings of our own vehicles. Because the human body is the most marvelously constructed vessel that the human mind can study. It truly is very complex, and there's more and more that we're discovering about it every single day, because every organ not only has its own visible purpose, but it also has an invisible spiritual purpose. So, you know, we're kind of starting to see science move in this direction of slowly but surely accepting the more invisible functions of the human form. So even though that science doesn't necessarily recognize a lot of the concepts that I'm going to be talking about in this video, it will. Just as it has with various other spiritual principles over the course of centuries, science has always kind of fallen behind of mysticism, but it always catches up, and it always kind of confirms a lot of the teachings and the principles that are taught within these Eastern religions, within, you know, Christian mysticism. All of these principles that have been known for many, many centuries are finally starting to be validated by materialist science. And it's going to continue to validate these principles that we're going to discuss in this video. So whether materialist minds like it or not, this is the truth. Like, this is it. Like, we are more than just these material vessels. Okay, and I think that it's time that we really start taking this shit seriously. But if we're going to discuss the human body, then we need to talk about the human body and its evolution. And not just its evolution, but its evolution with the earth. Because as I've mentioned before in many videos prior, we are microbial beings existing on a living body. Okay, Earth is very much alive. She is aware of our existence. She knows that we're here. And it's kind of the same way that we have all of these miniature beings, these little life forms that are existing on us, that are working around the clock to keep us alive and healthy. As above, so below. That is the main principle within esoterica. You always see this kind of reflection of the macroscopic to the microscopic. Like fractals. Everything replicates in a fractal form of itself. And, you know, the same way that our planet has changed in state over the course of its existence, our physical form also changes. Okay, so the density of the Earth has changed over the course of the time that it's been around, and the human being has been around with the Earth since the beginning. And we have been evolving with the Earth since the beginning. And our physical form has changed and undergone many transitions parallel to the Earth's transition. So if you're going to understand nature as a technology, you need to understand that everything is a reflection in nature. Okay, man is a reflection of the cosmos. It's a reflection of the Earth. The human body is a reflection of the Earth. The human body is a reflection of the cosmos. This is pretty foundational, guys. The divine reflection of all things is the most important thing to understand if you're going to understand nature as a technology. The mysteries of every nation have taught that laws, elements, and powers of the universe have been epitomized in the human constitution. Everything that exists outside of us can also find its analog within us. All right, the human form is seen as a direct reflection of the cosmos. I mean, it would only make sense considering that our mineral form is made up of the same base materials of our solar system. Okay, we're stardust, we're literal stardust, and this is just a material reflection of that principle. As above, so below, we are reflecting the cosmos. And Drunvalo Melchizedek mentions in his book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, that we are specifically reflecting the light of our sun. There's lights from other stars that influence our composition and our form, but the primary influence is the star of our solar system. And you can see this not only in our material composition, but you can see it in our behaviors as well. Our sun is a hydrogen star. Hydrogen is composed of one proton, which is feminine, and one electron, which is masculine, which is why we mate one-on-one, masculine and feminine, because we're replicating this process of hydrogen. This is not the only way we reflect the light of our sun. The way light passes through minerals impacts the color of that mineral. So an example of this is in crystals, who get their vast array of colors from the various wavelengths of light that don't get absorbed by their structure. We are looking at, when you see the color of a crystal, you're looking at the colors, the light waves that are able to pass through that mineral structure. Considering we also have a mineral form, our skin tone is a direct correlation with the light of our sun. And this is seen in the production of melanin. Sunlight influences our material structure. It influences our material manifestation. We're living in a holographic reality, which is just composed of light and sound. So we are the literal makeup of our sun's rays. The hemoglobin, which is partially responsible for skin color, is the pigmented part of our blood that contains iron. In the blood of cephalopods, mollusks, octopus, and cuttlefish, you have the pigment hemocyanin, which is based on copper. And this copper base turns the blood of these creatures blue. So the typical pigment that you usually see in the skin tone of these creatures is anywhere from like gray to blue, sometimes green, and other cool tone shades. As we evolve in consciousness, the makeup of our form changes, and this includes the composition of our blood, which would not only change our skin tone, but it will also allow us to progressively live longer. So we see this in Hinduism. You have gods like Vishnu, Krishna, Shiva, Kali, who all are depicted with blue skin. You also have the goddess Matangi, who's depicted with green skin. Their skin color serves as a representation of their divine constitution, but it's also a representation of their spiritual evolution. So these beings represent highly initiated humans that evolved to contain a different blood composition as a result of their spiritual mastery. You also see this in the case of ET sightings. You know, people report beings that have gray, blue, or even green skin. And even James Cameron's Avatar showcases blue humanoid beings who are very advanced in their connection to their Earth-like planet. This is not ET phenomena. I want to make that very clear, because you have propaganda with shows like Ancient Aliens who are going forth and advocating that these beings like Krishna and Kali and all of these various gods, that they're just aliens. But that's not true. This is not ET phenomena. This is the evolution of the magnificent human form. What's interesting is the term blue blood is often used to identify somebody who is of higher status and nobility. The blood is one of the most notable parts of esoteric anatomy. And Manly P. Hall states, the story of a man's soul is written in his blood. And that's why it's so popular in ritualism. It literally contains all of your etheric code. It's essentially woven with your life essence. All right, and that's why when you bleed out, you die, because it carries life force with it. And we see this in the material manifestation of the blood. It carries nutrients and oxygen to various parts of the form. So everything is connected, as above, so below. There is always an invisible spiritual component that is materializing in the third dimensional realm. And Manly P. Hall also states that the actual line between the vegetable and the animal is drawn with the coming of red blood. Consequently, certain small fishes, mollusks, etc., the animals that I mentioned earlier, are technically vegetables, although not recognized as such by science. So this also parallels Madame Blavatsky's description of early Lumerian humans who were jelly-like and had a fish-like bone structure. Okay, humans were once a part of the vegetable kingdom, and I talk about that in my evolutionary video. The sympathetic nervous system is a gift from the vegetable kingdom. It was a gift to the physical body of man. And if you extract it and stand the 33 vertebrae upright, its appearance is quite tree-like. Awareness of this vegetable component has remained most prominent in Chinese medicine. The vegetable form is also why the chakras are commonly associated with petaled lotus flowers, because those lotus flowers in the animal form manifest as the various organs affiliated with each chakra. We are a mashup of the various kingdoms, which is what makes us so advanced and complex. And the story of Adam and Eve tells of humanity's descent into matter, with the image of the entwining snake representing the formation of the spine and the central nervous system. The fruit of knowledge of good and evil represents the attainment of self-awareness, because in our earlier forms, we were mindless. As humanity sinks deeper into matter, the process of mitosis happens. And we really see this with the coming of the mind, because you have the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which represent that separation, that splitting into two. Because Lemurians were known to have reproduced through means of parthenogenesis, and the division of the two distinct sexes came later in the epoch. It was a gradual process, and Rudolf Steiner explains that some humans began developing more masculine qualities, and some began developing more feminine qualities. Some stayed the same. And those with the distinctive sex qualities were kind of seen as taboo at first. Eventually, those who were born without a binary sex couldn't reproduce, so they just died out. Sensory organs also didn't develop until the later Lemurian epoch. Steiner talks about how the first sense to develop was hearing. And the Lemurians had a group of wise women who would sing. And through their singing, the healing sounds of nature would be reverberated. And originally, these tones were just felt. And I don't even really want to say felt, because we didn't have sensory organs in the way that we know them today. They were more so absorbed. These vibrations of singing and healing were just absorbed by the human form. People of the time gathered around these wise priestesses to take part in the rhythms that were being expressed, the rhythms of nature that were being expressed. And eventually, we grew to become organs of hearing. As Rudolf Steiner puts it, we were all ear, because our body was literally just a giant hearing organ. And our ability to feel vibrational energy and through touch is what developed after hearing. So this was the second part of the senses to be developed. And then sight was introduced. So now, not only can we hear and feel the currents of creation, we can see them too. And the image of the Cyclops actually comes from the early Lumerian era, when the human form only had a single eye. And this eye could perceive a light spectrum that is unavailable to our current eyes today, and it's known as astral light. The modern two-eye structure developed when humans began to utilize the visible light spectrum known today over the astral light spectrum. So they started to kind of prioritize these light waves over the astral light waves, which caused the single eye to retreat into the brain and become what is now known as the pineal gland. It's said that children, recapitulating their previous periods of evolution, have limited use of the third eye up until the 7th year, when their skull bones fuse together. And this accounts for the semi-clairvoyant condition of children, who are far more sensitive to the energy realms than adults. So the pineal gland is supposed to secrete an oil, and this oil is called resin. And the pineal gland looks a lot like a pine cone, which is what it was named after. The pineal gland. This word is said to be involved in the origin of the Rosicrucians, who were working with the secretions of the pineal gland. But you yourself can also work with the functions of this gland. And there are methods of stimulating the third eye so that you can kind of wake it up, so to speak, and get it to function again. So there's a method that I recommend for people who are interested in working with their third eye and activating their third eye. there's a chant that you can do, and I think I've talked about it on my channel before. If you chant Tho, T-H-O, and you just leave enough space for your teeth to kind of vibrate together. As you chant this, it'll send vibrations up into the skull, which will vibrate the pineal gland. The third eye is often the main focus when it comes to the subject of esoteric ability. However, there are 6 other energy centers along the spine that, when working together in harmony, create the fully functional spiritual system that is your energy body. So the chakras are like vortexes that pull in energy from the surrounding environment. They process the energy and they translate it to your physical body as experiences, emotions, and bodily sensations. They allow you to process information in the form of your 5th and 6th senses. Once this energetic information has been metabolized, it's supposed to be released, but sometimes we don't let this energy go. And we create what's called a blockage. And you can kind of visualize it like sticking a string in a fan. The string represents the dense energy that isn't wanting to be metabolized. It's not wanting to be released. It, like the string in the fan, will eventually slow down the function of the chakra and potentially even cause it to stop completely. When this happens, when there's an imbalance, even in just one chakra, the chakras surrounding it become imbalanced because it's all connected. It's all a fully functioning connected system. And when one chakra is out of function, the others will have to work harder and become overactive to make up for the lack of function in the chakra that's being supported. Even though there are 114 chakra points in the body, 7 of these chakras, the main chakras, are of prime importance. And they have their individual correspondences in the various nerve ganglia and plexus of the different portions of the human body. All of our organs are a material manifestation of specific energy signatures that are directly contributing to their well-being and function. And I'm not going to get super deep into detail about the different chakras. I already have a video talking about the various 7 chakras and their functions, all the different details about them. You can check all of that stuff out in the description box below. I will link it for you guys if you're interested in watching. But I will briefly touch on each of them as they do play a pretty key role in the functioning of your etheric body as a technology. According to the mysteries, the prosthetic plexus, or the root chakra, is a red 4-petaled lotus that seats itself at the base of your spine. The base chakra roots you into the material world. It is the foundation for the rest of your form to be materialized. Your root chakra is the first to materialize. It's the first to come into existence. And a weak root chakra will set you up for the rest of your chakras to be weak as well. So it's very, very important to strengthen the root chakra first. If you are working with the etheric body as a technology, you want to really hone in on the function of the root so that you can support the upper chakras. So next is the sacral ganglion, or the sacral chakra, which is an orange 6-petaled lotus that seats itself along your pelvis just under your navel. This is your creative center, and it represents and manifests itself as your reproductive organs, your literal creative centers. This chakra governs your creative ability, it governs your sexuality, and it governs your emotional expression. The epigastric plexus, or the solar plexus, is a yellow 10-petaled lotus that sits right above your navel. So it sits between your navel and your chest. This chakra is affiliated with discernment, and it is the chakra affiliated with willpower. It's our inner sun. And since the sun represents the self, an overactive sacral chakra can cause one to become very selfish. So it's important to keep an eye for that. I do think a good portion of the Western world has very overactive lower centers, including the solar plexus chakra. And that's why we see a lot of egoism, we see a lot of materialism, we see a lot of overeating, over-sexualization of things. This is a representation of the overactive lower centers in a lot of people in the Western world. It's really important to keep the solar plexus balanced because this is often the target for spiritual hacking or hijacking of the human form. Anytime I've ever seen an entity attachment, it most often occurs through the solar plexus. When you hijack somebody's center of will, you hijack their entire being. And this is especially the case when people see reptilian beings. They're witnessing an etheric entity that has hijacked the human form. Anytime somebody experiences a reptilian entity, they're not witnessing an alien that's putting on a human suit and walking around faking being a human. You're looking at an actual human that has been spiritually hijacked by an etheric entity. Next is the cardiac plexus, which is also known as the heart chakra, or the 12-petaled lotus that sits in the center of the chest. The mysteries argue that this is where the seat of the soul is, not the pineal and pituitary glands. The heart, according to Steiner, is like an alchemical furnace. When the soul has activated and become aware of its connection to the Christ impulse, the heart begins its process of transmuting the mineral components in the blood to ether, further cycling them up into the pituitary and pineal glands. Interestingly enough, the blood is transferred into the pituitary gland by the hypophyseal portal system, which is essentially a system of blood vessels at the base of the brain that connects the hypothalamus to the pituitary. I just think, considering the context, it's a little interesting that the term portal is used in the anatomical description of this system. Because of this process, there are many that believe spiritual activation starts in the heart and not the third eye. And this would only make sense because the kundalini activation process starts from downward up. The heart has to activate before the third eye can. The heart is the most spiritual and mysterious organ of the human form. It truly is. Next is the pharyngeal plexus, or the throat chakra, which is a 16-petaled blue lotus that sits in the center of your throat. It governs your ability to creatively express, similar to the sacral. Verbal expression is technology, and I talk about that in my video on affirmations and subliminals. I will also list that down below in the description box if you're interested in watching. Matter is more malleable than we've been led to believe, and you're manipulating that matter with your words all the time. Your voice is very powerful, especially for those of you who sing. Like the Lumerian priestess class, you are impacting the world with the powerful vibrations emanating from your vocal cords. The human being is arguably the most complex musical instrument. Music theory and the diatonic scale is credited as being discovered by Pythagoras, but he really just derived it from the priests within the mysteries he took part in. That's why the act of chanting and singing is so popular in religious and spiritual ritualism, because certain vibrations of sound can stimulate or activate energy centers within the body. The most notable chant, Om, is a chant that stimulates the heart center. Try it right now. Breathe deep into your stomach and chant Om. You can feel it in your chest. Pythagoras applied his law of harmonic intervals to all of nature, demonstrating the harmonic relationship of the planets, constellations, and elements to each other. This idea was further rationalized in the mid-19th century by John A. Newlands, a British chemist who, while making a list of elements in ascending order according to their atomic weight, discovered that every eighth element is a distinct repetition of properties. This became known as the law of octaves, but this law doesn't just express itself in chemistry and music, it expresses itself in color too. Which takes me to the cavernous plexus, a 2-petaled indigo lotus that sits in the center of your forehead, affiliated with the pineal gland, which is why it's known as the third eye chakra. We spoke a bit about this chakra in the earlier part of the video and how in the Lumerian era, we had a single eye able to detect astral light, and that eventually this eye retracted into the brain and became what is now known as the pineal gland. That which is called light is actually a rate of vibration causing certain reactions upon the optic nerve. Not only are there light spectrums inconceivable to the eyes of today, but there are also unknown forms of light that no optical equipment will ever be able to register. We are surrounded by a supersensible universe of which we know nothing of, because the centers of our sense perception within the current human form are not developed to sufficiently respond to the subtler rates of vibration that the universe is composed of. The crown center is a 1,000-petaled violet lotus that seats itself at the top of the skull. It is the connection to the infinite, and it's directly linked to the top of your toroidal space. And the toroidal space describes the torus shape of the auric field, also known as the biomagnetic field. Your auric field is essentially your God-given shield. It's the barrier that keeps external forces from hijacking your energy and depleting your life force. As soon as the occult student begins their practice, their chakras first light up with a soft glow. And as they continue into their practice, those chakras begin to revolve and spin. And it is when this occurs that the faculty of clairvoyance begins. These chakras are the sensory organs of the soul, and their revolutions allow a person to be able to perceive of the superphysical world. So no one can behold any superphysical thing until they have developed their astral senses through opening up their chakras and through balancing their chakras. Now, once clairvoyance begins, one is able to perceive of the energetic exchange that occurs between all living beings. And that ability in and of itself is technology. Humans have an etheric-like Bluetooth connection to one another, and this is why highly sensitive people can pick up on specific qualities whilst barely knowing someone. Our auric field is like our own pocket of space in the etheric ocean. Sometimes this space can become muddled when we frequently engage in behaviors that are not in alignment with our highest good. If a fish is swimming around in dirty water and knows nothing of what it means to be in fresh water, then it's going to sit in its filth with blissful ignorance. Someone who is unaware of the state of their aura most often simultaneously adheres to the idea that life is just happening to them and that the misery and misfortune that they're experiencing is just the cards that they've been dealt. But what they don't realize is that all life events are just a direct reflection of the state of the aura and the energy body. A good majority of people are still unaware of the subtle dimensions that exist parallel to this material one. And that lack of awareness is being taken advantage of by a shadow force that runs much deeper than the whole political left and right bullshit we're being fed to keep our anger and frustration directed at each other. Manly P. Hall compares the interactions between people to reactions in chemistry, which is interesting when you think about how the term chemistry is used to describe a connection between two people. He says, "Our chemistry is not with chemicals as you know them, but with certain spiritual chemicals which are invisible to the ordinary individual. For chemicals, like men, can suffer when brought into an unkind relationship with each other." The interaction of energy fields can bring out the best or worst qualities in you, depending on how it interacts with another person. This is why it's incredibly important to be mindful of the kinds of people that you frequently associate with. Are your energetic minglings creating a positive or negative reaction? Not only are there energetic minglings happening between multiple people, there are also blends of energy happening within our own being as well, through Ida, Pingala, and Kundalini. The root chakra is a reservoir of etheric life energy, and under certain conditions, this energy can be awakened, causing it to propel upward through the spine and into the crown. This happens when the two main nadi channels of Ida and Pingala have been balanced and all 7 chakras have been opened so that this burst of energy can happen through the central Sushumna channel. There's a branch of yoga called Kundalini Yoga which aims to raise this energy through the use of movement, breath, and visualization. Yoga is a powerful method of activating the etheric body as spiritual technology. The various poses and bodily movements in yoga act as triggers, which allow the channels to open and close so that energy can flow through the nadis and bring life force to the various parts of the body that need it. Nadis are also referred to as pipes or tubes, and this is because they mirror a valve and pipe system. And we see this valve and pipe system manifest with the various locks in yoga. So you have the 3 main locks, the Mula Bandha, which is the sphincter lock, the Uddiyana Bandha, which is the stomach lock, and then you have the Halandara Bandha, which is the throat lock. So these all propel the energy by closing valves and pushing the energy upward. The Ida and Pingala energies flow through the body in a Vesica Pisces formation, forming a positive and negative current along the spinal cord. So it's really like a spiral. You could see it. The Kundalini awakening imagery is best shown in the staff of Hermes or the caduceus, which is most often affiliated with the medical field. This process is also why an initiate of Freemasonry is able to rise 33 degrees. This is meant to represent the serpentine fire raising up the 33 vertebrae in order to raise consciousness. So the initiate who is ready to awaken the Kundalini has undergone spiritual preparation. And because of this spiritual preparation, they will experience no ill effects of Kundalini awakening. You often see in the spiritual community, there's a lot of content out there around ascension symptoms, awakening symptoms, Kundalini awakening symptoms. And you hear these experiences of people who get sick and who have nightmares and hot flashes, and they're waking up in the middle of the night and they can't sleep. And they're having these really kind of awful things happen to them because of their Kundalini awakening. So this is not supposed to happen. Where somebody has undergone initiation and preparation, these ill effects won't be experienced. You won't get sick. You won't get flu-like symptoms. You won't have nightmares. It's not something that's meant to be a tumultuous experience. But in a person who has not undergone preparation and opens their kundalini too early, they will almost like push this energy through. So the energy still activates. But if the chakras are not balanced and the Ida and Pingala is not balanced, then it's going to be a very painful activation, because what's happening is all of these energies are becoming balanced very quickly. So people often experience what seems like their life falling apart after a kundalini awakening happens. And this is because they were living a life that was so vastly deviated from who they're meant to be, from this kundalini activated version of them, that it quickly realigns them. And this can be very jarring for the consciousness. And this is why some people even close their kundalini. They shut it off right after. People will have these really terrifying experiences with spiritual awakening. And you see this a lot specifically in dogmatic Christianity. You see a lot of content creators who are Christian saying, you know, I tried to do I had a spiritual awakening and I started experiencing demonic activity, and I worked with crystals and I started experiencing demonic activity, and yada, yada, yada. This is because they weren't really fully understanding of what they were getting themselves into. And I think this happens a lot in Christianity because Christianity in its modern form is built on fear. So anytime somebody who has been raised up in a Christian background experiences something that is, you know, kind of out of line with what they've been, we'll be honest, what they've been indoctrinated to believe, they fear it, right? Because Christianity roots itself in fear, or at least the modern form, right? We all know that dogmatic Christianity in its current form is not the true essence of Christianity. True Christianity is mystical inherently. And what happens is, like, you see this painful burning away of all of these old energies, and it can cause a manifestation of negative experiences that are reflective of that quick, painful activation of these energy centers. And if somebody's not active in their spiritual evolution and they open their kundalini and they keep it open, these impurities will begin to manifest. So, you know, we often see this in people who are not responsible spiritual leaders, cult-like personalities. These are people who have opened their kundalini. You know, they've attained some level of spiritual awareness, but they still have those shadow essences there that they're not willing to work through, and those will eventually overtake them. So a big part of kundalini activation is really being on top of your spiritual health and really working through a lot of the traumas and a lot of the experiences that you've carried with you over the course of your lifetimes. And I say lifetimes plural because we do carry things over from each individual experience into the progressive incarnation thereafter. There are very complex methods by which one can safely work with the kundalini, but it involves intensive focus upon one's level of maturity and growth. In other words, these methods require a great deal more than just the intention to move the kundalini energy. You have to be all in with this. You can't just want to move your kundalini for the sake of moving your kundalini because it's cool and spiritual, bro, and like we're all in the vibes, bro. You know, it has to be done from a place of genuinely wanting to mature yourself and genuinely wanting to tap into that soul essence so that you can really be a bright light in the world, because true spiritual power is a great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. So we see this in the activation of kundalini. So we're seeing an increasing theme of humanity attempting to force evolution through the rise of transhumanism. And again, I talk about transhumanism in my video down in the description box below. I'll talk more about it in some more videos in the future. But what proponents of these materialist ideologies don't know is that they are evolving in accordance to the will of the angelic hierarchies. So we are a part of a grand system of beings, you could say, of very conscious and spiritually connected, godlike beings. And we're babies. We're like baby angels in the flesh. We're like the baby versions of these beings. And under us, we have the animal kingdom, we have the mineral kingdom, and we have the plant kingdom. So we're like their angels. And to us, we have older brothers and sisters who have already undergone these spiritual initiations and didn't have to come into materiality. But I do believe, from what I've received in connecting with these beings, that they are very fascinated by materiality, and I think they learn a lot from us as well. Just like we learn from children. You know, we teach children a lot of things, but there's also a lot of things that children can teach us. So there's a grand hierarchy of spiritual beings that are almost walking each other home. And we're a part of this hierarchy. So the human being's evolution is being guided by our older brothers and sisters, these angels, right? And I'm not necessarily talking about angels in like the modern Christian sense, or like even in the New Age sense, because you kind of see that word being thrown around a lot. Because you really do have to be mindful with the beings that you are connecting with, because oftentimes lower astral entities will try to disguise themselves as these beings. So it really just requires spiritual discernment, but there is no need to force evolution. There's no need to integrate tech into our human form. That is mutilation of the form. To integrate inorganic technology into the human being is to ruin the human being. And I talk about that in my AI video. We're literally creating a whole separate species that is inhuman. People who integrate tech into their bodies will not be human anymore. They will not be able to ascend the way that organic humans will be able to ascend. They will have to undergo their own karmic lessons that are affiliated with third density. So technology will literally keep people trapped in third density and maybe even descend them into a more dense reality. And again, I talk about that in my AI video. So there is no need for integration. Like, we already have all of these vast processes happening under the surface that we can utilize. It's not about creating a separate human being that can connect with technology. Not at all. This is about creating a whole separate technology altogether that can connect with the human form. Because we already have these magnificent processes of tech, okay? We are literal tech ourselves. And we can create a technology that connects with us. We can have all of these advancements without dominating nature. Okay, we can work in harmony with her. We can integrate nature back into society. And that's really what this movement is pushing for. The integration of nature back into society and creating a world, creating technology, creating a civilization that revolves itself around our wondrous connection to nature. Because that is true technology. Our connection to all living beings and our unified consciousness is technology. And we don't need to manipulate the human form to get to that point. We don't need to manipulate the human form to be able to connect with anything. We can do all of that on our own organically. And I'll talk more about that in my next video, which is going to be about crystals. We're going to talk about crystals and the technological advancements that can come with using crystals. We already are using crystals in tech through silicones. So, I'll go ahead and get deeper into that in the next video. But that is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for sitting here with me. I know that this was a lot of information to take in, and I encourage you to pause and take a break and come back, and watch this video again if you really need to digest this a little bit more, because I understand that it's a lot of information. I will list all my sources down in the description box below so you can further research this yourself and come to your own understanding of this wisdom. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. I'll list all my socials in the description box below. I'm not super active on Instagram. I don't know. I don't really like Meta, so I am way more active on Twitter. So if you guys want to connect with me on Twitter, I would love to have you guys be a part of the community. I post a lot more about this stuff on my Twitter. So if you're interested in learning more, check out my Twitter in the description box below. Check out my Patreon, guys. I have bonus content, extended tarot readings, and all of that. Feel free to check out my other content. I'll list some fun videos in the description box below if you're interested in kind of learning more about this wisdom. But other than that, I will see you later. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.